January 15th, 1919. A seemingly ordinary winter day in Boston. But in the blink of an eye, an unimaginable horror swept through the city's north end. Not fire, not flood, not even a bomb. It was a wave, a terrifying, unstoppable wave of molasses. A sticky, sweet, and deadly disaster that killed 21 people, injured 150, and flattened an entire neighborhood. Imagine the air thick with the smell of warm sugar, a comforting, familiar scent, suddenly replaced by the terror of a 25-foot wave of pure syrup. How could something so innocuous become an instrument of mass destruction? On Bets, Echoes, and Evidence, we're diving into one of history's most bizarre and forgotten tragedies. Prepare for a story so strange it can only be true. Before we begin, can you even imagine what it would be like to face a tsunami of syrup? To understand the disaster, we first need to understand the bustling, vibrant Boston of 1919. The North End was a densely populated immigrant neighborhood, a melting pot of Italian, Irish, and Jewish families. Life was hard, but full of community and the promise of a new world. For Antonio Di Stasio, a cooper working near the waterfront, January 15th was just another workday until the sky roared. Amidst the brick, tenements, and narrow streets stood a colossal dark structure, the molasses storage tank of the Purity Distilling Company, 50 feet high, 90 feet in diameter, holding over 2.3 million gallons of thick, dark, sweet molasses. It was a landmark, often seen as a symbol of the thriving industrial port. But beneath its imposing facade lay a ticking time bomb. Who built this monster? And was anyone truly prepared for what it held? The molasses tank was not built with care. It was built with urgency. The Purity Distilling Company needed vast quantities of molasses for industrial alcohol, especially with America's entry into World War I driving demand. They cut corners. Local residents knew it. For months, Sugar Nipple Hill, as the tank was affectionately and ironically known, groaned and leaked. Children would collect molasses dripping from its seams. Residents complained of constant rumbling, of strange popping sounds. One resident, a local electrician, even described hearing the tank groan and rumble like a subway train just days before the disaster. The tank's builder, a man named Arthur Gell, who barely had any engineering experience, cut costs by using steel plates that were too thin and sealing them with faulty, weak rivets. The manager, Arthur Gell, dismissed these concerns, citing trivial reasons like fermentation and settling. Those tiny pieces of metal were the ultimate weak point, and residents saw the evidence. Molasses weeping from the seams, a chilling sign that the tank's very bones were failing. This wasn't just poor construction, it was a race against prohibition. The 18th Amendment, banning alcohol, was ratified just days before the flood, but wouldn't take effect for another year. Purity Distilling was frantically trying to produce as much industrial alcohol as possible, and that meant filling the tank to absolute capacity, ignoring the dire warnings. These were the echoes of a disaster foretold, whispers ignored in the rush for profit. How could anyone ignore such clear signs of impending doom? And what secrets was the Purity Distilling Company desperately trying to keep hidden? On that fateful afternoon, at exactly 12:30 p.m., the unthinkable happened, with a terrifying roar like a giant cannon going off. Or maybe the shredding of a colossal metal drum. The massive molasses tank ruptured, not a leak, but an explosion. The steel plates ripped apart, launching rivets like bullets through the air. What followed was horrific. A viscous wave, estimated to be between 15 and 25 feet high, surged into the streets at speeds of up to 35 miles per hour. It was a tsunami of treacle, sweeping away everything in its path. The force of the wave was so great it bent steel plates and lifted a heavy trolley car off its tracks, demonstrating kinetic energy that rivaled a small bomb. Tenement buildings were torn from their foundations, stable houses collapsed, and an elevated train trestle was severely damaged. People, horses, and entire carts were engulfed. Fireman George Leahy described being picked up by the wave and carried with it, half drowning, half smothering, for what seemed like an eternity. Children playing in the streets, workers on their lunch break, even those simply walking by, they were trapped. How could something so thick, so sweet, be so incredibly deadly? And what does it feel like to be engulfed by a wave of pure syrup? The initial shock was followed by a grim realization. This wasn't just a flood, it was a sticky trap. Molasses, especially in the cold January air, is incredibly dense, about 1.5 times heavier than water. Molasses has a specific gravity of about 1.4, turning a simple flood into a crushingly heavy, viscous wave. This density, combined with its high viscosity, made it exceptionally lethal. Victims weren't just drowned, they were crushed by the initial impact or slowly suffocated, unable to move through the thick, clinging goo. Rescuers struggled for days, wading through waist-deep molasses. Victims weren't just drowned, the wave's initial impact crushed them, and as the 40-degree January air hit the molasses, it began to stiffen, fast. Rescuers were forced to wade through material that quickly became like thick, clinging tar, or even freshly poured concrete, making every movement a desperate, exhausting struggle. They used axes to cut people free and hoses to blast away the sticky substance, but the cold made it even thicker, hardening it like concrete around the victims. Forensic evidence gathered later revealed critical flaws in the tank's construction. It was built with steel too thin to withstand the pressure and without proper stress testing. Furthermore, a sudden temperature increase on that January day, rising from sub-zero to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, caused the already stressed molasses to expand, delivering the final, catastrophic blow to the weakened tank. The evidence was clear. This wasn't an act of God. It was a catastrophic failure of engineering and a stunning lack of corporate responsibility. Could such a devastating combination of human negligence and natural physics truly be the sole explanation for this bizarre tragedy, or was there more to uncover? The cleanup was a monumental task. For weeks, the north end was mired in molasses. Firefighters pumped seawater into the streets, but the thick goo clung to everything. It took over 87,000 man-hours to clear the streets, and some reports say the smell of molasses lingered for decades in Boston, especially on hot summer days. But the immediate disaster quickly led to a prolonged legal battle. Over 125 lawsuits were filed against the Purity Distilling Company. The trial lasted 5 years, featuring over 3,000 witnesses, countless expert testimonies, and a mountain of evidence. The trial lasted 5 exhausting years, becoming one of the first major tort cases in American history. In the end, Purity Distilling was found liable. The judge concluded that the tank had been negligently constructed and maintained with insufficient testing. The company was found guilty of negligent construction and ordered to pay damages totaling hundreds of thousands of dollars. A landmark verdict that established the precedent that corporations could be held fully responsible for industrial accidents. The Great Molasses Flood profoundly changed industrial regulations. It led to stricter building codes, requiring engineers to seal and certify blueprints and mandated proper oversight for large construction projects. It was a grim lesson learned at immense cost. Even today, does this bizarre tale serve as a stark reminder of unchecked industrial power? And are we truly learning from the echoes of such destructive disasters? The Great Molasses Flood of 1919 remains one of history's most unusual and tragic industrial accidents. A disaster born not of malice, but of negligence, greed, and a terrifying interaction between physics and a sweet, sticky substance. It's a testament to the fact that even the most benign elements can, under the wrong circumstances, become agents of chaos. A truly unforgettable echo from the past, reminding us to always demand the evidence. What forgotten disaster do you think deserves to be unearthed next? Let me know in the comments below. With the echoes heard and the evidence laid bare, until next time, keep listening for the echoes.